My name is Robert David Steele. I'm a former Marine Corps infantry officer, former spy for the United States of America, and I am the champion for open source everything engineering, which will lift the 5 billion poor at 10% of the cost of the failed Western economic paradigm.
Open source intelligence or open source communication. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Open source.
Look, one of the things that most people don't realize is that the secret intelligence world is spending $90 billion a year on the 4% that it can steal. And they're refusing to take seriously everything that is openly available, which turns out to be 96% of what we need to know. My most famous soundbite in the 1990s was, "Don't send a spy where a schoolboy can go." But the reality is the intelligence community thinks it's in the business of stealing secrets for the president, and it's not in the business of decision support. Decision support is about answering a question, okay? Now, General Tony Zinni, one of the best Marines we've ever had, when he was commanding general of the Central Command, he was engaged in 2 wars and 12 joint task forces. And he sat down with his J2, his intelligence director, and he said, "How much of what I need is coming from the secret world?" And the director answered, "Roughly 20%. And he said, "Of that 20%, how much of it can we find through open sources rather than relying on secret sources?" The guy said 80%. That is where Tony Zinni's on-the-record answer came from. He got, at best, 4% of what he needed as a general engaged in 2 wars and 12 joint task force actions, 4% at best from secret sources and methods. Now, CIA's worst nightmare is named Robert David Steele.
No.
They actually call me open source.
Yeah.
SORES, open source. Okay? They absolutely freaking cannot stand it that I kicked their ass in a benchmark exercise for the Aspen Brown Commission. That was the commission to reinvent intelligence for the 21st century. We had a benchmark exercise for the commissioners, okay? And the topic was Burundi. And they were required, the entire intelligence community, not just CIA, but NSA and everybody else, was required to deliver overnight what they had on Burundi. They had nothing. With 6 phone calls, I produced Russian 1 to 50 combat charts for Burundi, French commercial imagery in the archives, less than 4 years old with no cloud cover, the top 10 academics writing on Burundi available for immediate debriefing, the top 100 journalists writing on Burundi available for immediately debriefing, 22-page presidential prime ministerial level analyses of the Burundi geopolitical implications from Oxford Analytica. And last but not least, Jane's Information Group called in an analyst over the weekend. I've been friends with Alfred Rollington, their CEO at the time, for decades. They called in an analyst. They created an order of battle for non-state armed groups in Burundi while CIA was still counting people with uniforms. And my order of battle included the Toyotas, what are called the technicals, okay? I cannot exaggerate to you the incompetence and the irrelevance of the U.S. secret world. That's why I've written 8 books, 2 with forwards. If Donald Trump, and by the way, the Office of Management and Budget has approved my proposal for an open source agency twice. Once in 2000, once in 2010, with an operating budget of $2 billion a year. I absolutely guarantee you that if Donald Trump allowed me to create an open source agency, not only would he be the best informed president on the planet, but all of that decision support could be shared with Congress, with the media, with the public, and with other countries. Absolutely. Which means we would all have the true economic costs, the holistic analytics that we need to enter the 21st century. To cut the 50% waste in government, the 50% waste across the U.S. economy. You know, I've spent my whole life getting ready for this coming week. And it's like the joke, South African white guy fell into a river full of crocodiles. And this black guy comes along and he says, "Give me your hand, give me your hand." And the white guy just absolutely would not give him his hand. Finally, the black guy had an epiphany. That's the Republican word. Democrats like to say aha experience. He said, I know how to communicate with this white guy surrounded by alligators. He said, take my hand, take my hand. The white guy took his hand and was saved. Donald, take my hand.
Well, you know, you talk about secret societies. JFK gave a famous speech about the dangers of secret societies.
Yeah.
And then the next year, well, you know what happened.
Yeah.
Well, so, JFK was assassinated by his own government. And J. Edgar Hoover, the cross-dressing pedophile who founded the Federal Bureau of Investigation, was a key part of that. So was Allen Dulles, who was a neo-Nazi Wall Street lawyer. Okay, Dulles single-handedly saved the Nazis in their gold after World War II. And we in the United States are paying for that because many of the descendants of the Nazis are in key neoconservative positions today. People don't really understand that the American Republic has had its foreign policy hijacked by criminals and neo-Nazis. General Wesley Clark has said this on YouTube. Our foreign policy has been hijacked. We have been waging covert war against Russia for the last 20 years. And in fact, Buzzy Krongard from Brown and Root went to CIA in order to manage a gold war, G-O-L-D, a gold war against Russia. We have been committing illegal acts against the Russian economy for the past 20 years. Okay, from 1998 to 2001, Buzzy Krongard was managing, with George Soros and others, an endeavor to crash the Russian economy. And people wonder why the Russians are just a little torqued.
I get it.
Okay.
So let me get this straight. Who is hijacking us right now?
Well, the neoconservatives. There's an excellent book that I recommend to your listeners called Vice, Dick Cheney and the Hijacking of the American Presidency. He basically played Baby Bush like a fiddle. It was actually Dick Cheney who was running the U.S. government. And by the way, let's talk about 9/11 for a minute. Okay?
Well, let's do it. Let's do it.
Dick Cheney was in charge of 9/11. 13 countries warned us in advance. This is a long-standing Israeli plot that the planning began in 1988. And the Israelis worked with the Pakistanis and others, and they got this whole idea of a false flag attack that would make America enraged and cause them to go into the Middle East and do what the Israelis want, which is balkanize the Middle East. 13 countries got wind of this and warned us. Instead of raising our defenses and putting a stop to it, Dick Cheney basically said 3 months in advance, I love it! This is mine now. And he declared a national counterterrorism exercise 3 months in advance for 9/11. He then worked with Larry Silverstein and others to make it happen. Controlled demolitions brought down all 3 buildings, including the one that wasn't hit by anything. The aircraft were all theatrical. Okay, I don't know whether they were drones or what, but they weren't what brought the buildings down. The AIG offices were pre-planted with explosives to create that theatric effect. I believe that evangelical Pentecostals in the U.S. Air Force worked with Rumsfeld and Cheney to arrange a missile into the Pentagon. A missile hit the Pentagon, not an airplane.
Right.
Yes.
And the bottom line here is that Dick Cheney made 9/11 happen, murdered 3,000 people, so that he could then go on to tell 935 now documented lies that would lead to the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. And oh, by the way, somebody apparently didn't tell Dick Cheney that if we invaded Iraq, we would unleash the 80% Shiite that loves Iran.
Yeah, 9/11, perhaps the first snuff film
televised. Ooh, that's a very interesting way to look at it, but it is not Dick Cheney's first snuff film. For that, you need to go to pedophilia and the murder of children after they have been abused.
Oh, wow. Yeah, which is a big topic, huge topic right now.
Well, I'm glad it is, because people have avoided discussing it. Law enforcement across this country has turned a blind eye. by direction of the governors and mayors, who are in turn responding to the two-party tyranny. Pedophilia in the United States of America has continued to happen because the leadership of the Republican Party particularly, and the Democratic Party secondarily, has wanted it to be that way.
Interesting.
Because they all have their hands in the cookie jar, I guess.
Now,
that's too nice a way to put it.
Yeah.
And not all Republican leaders and not all Democratic leaders are pedophiles. If I had to guess, I'd say 20% of them are. And I do believe that there are about 30 people that are on the FBI's interrogation list right now. I don't think Trump will arrest more than 2 or 3, but the message has been sent. However, he jumped the gun. I would not have gone after the pedophiles until I first had the Electoral Reform Act, and I had first barnstormed the country, and I had first created a political base that the Republican Party could not handle. Okay. Right now, Trump is too dependent on Paul Ryan, who is by no means his friend.
No,
he's a globalist.
yeah.
Let's just go back real quick with 9/11, so everybody knows this fact that Larry Silverstein made a lot of money from.
Well, not only did he make a lot of money, but I'm absolutely certain the insurance companies were co-conspirators.
Yes.
Insurance companies are not stupid.
Right.
Okay. 9/11 was a massive money laundering scheme. And oh, by the way, all of the short trades on the airlines and so forth have been traced to Brown and Root, Buzzy Krongard's firm.
Okay.
Okay. So Buzzy Krongard made money on the murder of the Americans on 9/11.
That's sick.
But I think it's important to note that Larry Silverstein also had an asbestos problem he couldn't solve.
Right.
And there are a number of books. I'm not going to belabor this. If you go to 58iota.net and you look up 9/11, you'll find a lot of stuff. We have over 20,000 posts. And 58iota is much more than a blog. It's actually a reference site. It holds information that has been built up over time from over 800 contributors. So look up 9/11. Look up pedophilia. Look up Dick Cheney. Look up fascist. Look up Zionist. You will find all kinds of information there.
Yeah.
Well, if Google decides not to censor it, we can find the information.
Well, Google cannot censor Phi Beta Iota. I take no advertising revenue, and DuckDuckGo is what I recommend as the alternative to Google. I've talked to my CTO, and he tells me that for $50 million, we can shut down Twitter, Facebook, and Google, as well as YouTube. For $50 million, we can create a blockchain alternative based in Iceland that nobody can touch. I don't have that kind of money, but if Donald Trump wanted to create the Trump channel, and if the open source agency were alive and well, I would create an alternative internet with Tim Berners-Lee and a few others, and it would be an internet that cannot be censored. Now, obviously, every country is going to want to have its own conditions, and I have no problem with letting China censor its internet. But my internet will not be censorable.
You know, I mean, the whole thing is that I